Hello, everybody. A very warm welcome to all of you. Let me see who all are there. So I can see Jess, George, Oluwatavo, Deep Jyoti, Sai Ramakrishna, to name a few. I would love to hear back a hello from you guys. And once again, a very warm welcome to this session on reading and comprehension from GMATVERBAL. Today, we're going to talk about the art of involved reading. And so, just before we begin with the rest of the presentation, guys, just let me know if all of y'all can hear me clearly, if I am absolutely clearly audible to all of you. Hi, Gaurav. So, guys, the very fact that all of us are here gathered today is evidence to the fact that we are facing problems with reading and comprehension. And again, if you look at the division of reading and comprehension in GMAT verbal reasoning section, it's a very vital area. It's a game changer. We'll talk about that in a moment. So, hi Pooja. Guys, I would love to hear back a hello from you so that I know who I'm talking to, who all are out there. So, hi Naveen, Jitender, Sandipta, Rohul, Jess, George. I wonder what ES stands for. Richa, Khushi. Okay. All right. So, hello, everybody. All right. Let's set the agenda of the day. But before that, just very quickly and very briefly, let me tell you about myself. My name is Sunita and I'm the verbal head at GMATVERBAL. I'm also the lead course architect of the GMAT Verbal course at GMATVERBAL. Behind me, I've got tons of teaching experience, tons of mentoring experience, and all those experiences have led us to design this course so that it can address the problems that students face. All right, and I've scored the 99th percentile multiple times on the exam. Okay. All right, guys. So let's kickstart the session and let me quickly put out the agenda for you. So we're going to talk about RC, the importance of RC very briefly, just a couple of minutes. Then we're going to talk about why most of us falter at RC. What is it about RCs that, sorry, we find troubling? And then the most important part of the session is when we're going to talk about what is this art of involved and evolved reading and how does it benefit us. And we're going to do this, all of this discussion through a lot of practice questions and improvement strategies along the way. So let's get started, guys. The first thing is why RC, why is RC very important? All right. I'm just going to quickly get through this. So I can see some of you are saying you cannot hear me clearly, guys. I'm just going to put out the polls once again. Can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly? I'm speaking right now. Can you hear me clearly? Okay, wonderful. You guys can now, it seems. All right, great, guys. So let me quickly talk about the importance of RC questions. Not that SC and CR are not important on their own, but if you look at the number of questions that belong to the RC section, it speaks for itself. So a student can expect to find anything between 3 to 4 passages on an average exam, and anything between 12 to 15 questions from the RC area, which means slightly more than 1/3 of your total 36 questions come from RC. And because RC questions come consecutively, that is one after the other, chances of getting them wrong in a bunch is high. Therefore, it's a game changer. Consecutive mistakes are penalized heavily. All right, your score falls very badly if you get 1 or 2 questions wrong in a row. So we've done a lot of research, and this is from actual data. If you have, let's say, 3 students, student A, student B, and student C, and if student A has done all the sentence correction questions incorrect, but the rest correct, then you have student B who's done all the CR incorrect and the rest correct, and then you have student C who has done all RC incorrect and the rest correct. So can you guess what will be the difference in the scores of these 3 students? Can you guess, guys, what will be the difference in the scores of these three students? Whose score will be higher, whose score will be lower, or do you think the scores will be the same? You can answer me in the chat box. Whose score will be higher, whose will be lower, or do you think they'll all score the same? Let's understand the importance of RC questions. Okay, so Gaurav says student C will be the lowest. C will be the lowest, says Deep Jyoti. And I'm sure the others are also guessing the same. So again, this is based on actual data, all right? And there could be multiple things here going on, maybe the RCs where they got incorrect or not. So this is the difference. You can have a huge difference, all right? Score of student C will always be lower than the scores of student A and B. This tells us that RCs, getting RCs wrong is going to penalize your going to penalize you more heavily than the other areas would. All right. So that is why you need to be very, very, very up with your RC area. So mistakes in RC just not acceptable. Okay. And especially if you make these mistakes in the first quarter or even in the second quarter, then it can be really heavily punishing. So here's the thing. What is it about RCs that is scary, guys? I would like to hear from you. Yes, guys. So you're right. C's will be lowest. The others will be definitely higher. What is it about RCs that troubles you? So each of you just think about what is the most troubling thing about RCs and quickly post it in the chat box. Let's see whether your thoughts and ours match. And today we're going to tackle those demons. Go ahead, guys. Let me know, what is it that you fear most when it comes to reading and comprehension? So Fez says assumptions. Okay, Fez. Assumptions, yes. I mean, you do get questions based on assumptions as well in reading and comprehension. But then assumption skills are learned when you are doing your CR area, which we do before we get onto the RC section. All right, let me read the answers here. So Gaurav says eliminating the wrong answers based on the passage is the toughest. Okay. Sandipta says long, non-familiar passages. Rule says inferences. Deep Jyoti says finding the main idea of the passage or the exact purpose of the passage. Pratik says too much information to comprehend. Sai says the vocabulary used, okay, and many interconnected facts as well as assumptions. So, from what I can understand is, and George says inference. All right. So, in what I can understand from your answer choices, sorry, your my bad, from your responses is that issues such as too much of information, inability to comprehend all of it and connect it together, put it all together, main idea questions, drawing inferences, identifying assumptions, and eliminating the process of elimination, unfamiliar passages. All of these are trouble areas for most of you here. So if I can sum all of it, I've already kind of identified, and this I have identified through my interaction with students. They come and tell me their pain points. So unfamiliar genre is passages. So somebody says, I am okay if it's a science-based passage, but I'm not so okay if it is a humanities passage. Somebody says, I'm okay if it's a business passage, but I'm not so okay if it is a science passage, and so on and so forth. Remember, guys, they're not testing you for your field-specific knowledge. Therefore, you shouldn't think along those lines. Poor recall, and this is again a very common complaint that I'm able to remember some parts of the passage but not all of it, and by the time I reach the question and answer level stage, I have forgotten what I've read in the passage. And then of course close answer choices, I'm able to bring down to the closest two choices and then I'm not able to eliminate from any of them. And of course time. Okay, time is a big factor, I believe, everybody keeps thinking about time and tries to cut short time. All right. And all these different factors that you fear actually help you set up a mental block in your mind. So there is this block that RCs are never going to get correct, or RC doesn't improve, and what shall I do about RCs? I don't know what to do about RCs. So because of that mental block, you try to look for tips and tricks to tackle this. So different kinds of things, and I've read about such kind of gimmicks here and there. So somebody will tell you, okay, just scan and skim through the passage, huh? Don't read it thoroughly. And when you go to the question, then you come back for the answer to the passage and reread again. Or somebody tells you, okay, read the first line of the passage and read the last line of the passage, and then just scan through the rest of the passage. Or somebody says, okay, if the passage has different paragraphs, you read the starting of the paragraph, the last line of the paragraph, and then just skim through the rest. Or somebody says, first read the question and then search for the answer, and so on. None of these work. None of these work, for the simple reason that this is not the way GMAT, RC passages or questions are designed to work. All of these don't work because of a particular reason. What does actually happen because of these gimmicks is you lose valuable time, you compromise accuracy, and not only that, if you're not doing well on an RC passage, I'm sure you felt this, for those of you who've already taken the exam or given mocks. If you do badly on an RC passage, that feeling, that lack of confidence is kind of spread throughout the rest of the questions as well. All of this is not going to bode well for you. And all of this happens because you have not got a precise understanding of the passage. You just skim through the passage, you sail through the passage thinking you will look up the answer later on, but that doesn't work. So today we're going to talk about this precise understanding of the passage, guys. Okay. Now, before we go into this, all right, here's the thing. I'm going to bring up a segment of a passage next, and I'm going to give all of you about 2 minutes to 2 to 3 minutes, 3 minutes to solve one question. Read that particular paragraph and solve one question only. Currently, you solve it the way you normally solve it. All of you, okay? All of you just follow the normal way you solve a passage these days. And then we're going to talk about how to solve it using the art of involved and evolved reading and how that makes a difference. So guys, any queries or if you're ready for the passage, just let me know. Are you guys ready for the passage, the acid test? Shall I bring it up? And if you have any queries, you can just quickly put it in the chat box. Okay, it seems all of you are raring to go on the passages. So today we've got some nice passages lined up. I hope you will. So all of you pay attention. Now there's one simple request. Okay. While you are going through this this art of involved and evolved reading, all right, I don't want you to think about the time. This is for later. So for now, just solve it the way you solve it. You have 3 minutes, and I'm going to bring up the passage next. So here's the passage. There's that one question. You have exactly 3 minutes. At the end of 3 minutes, I'm going to stop the polls. Your time starts now. I'm going to mute myself in the meantime, guys. Okay, Jess, I'll just bold the. All right, guys. So I am going to end the polls. Some of you may have done this passage early on, so don't worry. There are two more passages about to come up. So just bear with me. The idea will be I want you to see how I'm going to read this text. All right, so let me end the polls. I'm going to count 5. If you're ready with your answers, please put in the answers. All right, here it goes. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, let's look at the poll results. So the poll results speak for themselves. There's a wide variety here. 13% of you have marked A as the correct answer. 33% of you have marked B as the correct answer. 26% of you have marked C as the correct answer. 20% of you have marked D. And 6% of you have marked E. So, I mean, B, C, D, 33, 26, 20. All right, guys. So, now I'm going to bring up some common thoughts here and let me know if you share those thoughts. So, let's see. And if you guys have thought of one or more of these, just answer a yes. Okay, I'll bring up the polls. But before that, let me see how many of you thought to yourselves, oh my God, what was that? The language was like, I don't know, what was it? It was very difficult to understand. And how many of y'all did this? Even if you did not understand something, you told yourself, okay, let me not waste time now. Let me continue reading. I'm going to tackle later on whatever I have not understood. How many of y'all did this? Or how many of y'all felt this? Okay, after reading the passage, you felt you just had a broad understanding of the paragraph, not much. You just have some idea about some royalist mention somewhere, some patriarchalism mention, some feminist, and some conflict, but not really what's going on in detail. How many of you were confused between two option choices? And how many of you ended up rereading some part of the passage or even the entire passage when you went to the question? Okay. And then you marked some choice, but you weren't confident. So I'm going to bring up a poll and let me know. Mark a yes if you had even one of these thoughts. You could have more than one, but if you have even one of these thoughts, then it means that you're not reading the way you should be reading. All right. Look, all of us want a high score, okay? There's no doubt about it. But then, in order to get that high score, you have to start building a particular skill. As far as RC is concerned, it is a little different from CR, it's a little different from SC. It hasn't got so many rules and regulations as such. Okay, there aren't some absolute rules. Say, for example, in assumption you have it should be a must be true condition, and so on and so forth. But there's a basic skill that is required, and whenever you're building skills, you need to have patience, guys. Why I'm saying this at the beginning? Because what the way I'm going to read now, you will realize, you will think to yourselves that, oh my god, this will take time. But understand, this will take a skill, and that skill building will take time. So here goes. Now while I am discussing the methodology, okay, I want you guys to pay very close attention indeed. In fact, I would like to bring to your notice something right at the beginning. GMAT passages are really dense. I mean, look at the construction here. You have one sentence beginning here and ending here. Just notice, huh? This is just for your notice. You have sentence 2 starting here and ending here. I mean, can you believe that? Almost a small paragraph. And then you have the last sentence starting here and ending here. Just 3 dense sentences and your paragraph is over. Okay, so that should make you understand that you cannot read those long sentences in one breath, or even 2 breaths, or even 3 breaths. You would probably need a lot more breaths, a lot more breaks. You would need to pause and read to understand what's going on. And here you can use the skills that you learned during your SC preparation. You know, at GMAT we have this meaning based approach. So you can use the skills that you learned while going through your SC module to go through your RC passages. So I'm just going to show you how all of that works. Now we want to first tackle the first sentence. Okay. It is an odd but indisputable fact. Now I stop here. Okay. I stop here and I ask myself, okay, who's saying this? Since nobody has been attributed the author's opinion, it's very important to note what is the author's opinion, what is the third party opinion, and what is just a fact. Okay, so author finds something odd but says that it is a fact, and you've got to remember that. What is that thing which is odd but it is a fact? If you read the next sentence, 17th century English women. Okay, so we're talking about 17th century English women. Which women? You have a modifier, who are generally regarded as among the forerunners. So these English women are regarded as forerunners, means the beginners, pioneers of modern feminism. Okay, so the feminism that we see today, these 17th century English women are considered the pioneers of that this modern feminism. Are almost, now this is a verb. Okay, so understand, your core sentence here reads, these 17th century English women are all identified with the royalist side. Okay, and this is an odd fact. So when you boil it down, you understand the crux. It makes understanding the rest of the passage also very easy. So in the first sentence, all the author is saying so far is that it's really odd, but it's a fact that these English women, the early feminists, they all belonged to the royalist side. That is something that the author finds puzzling. Emphasize on words like these. And then you have more details. So they all belong to one side only in the conflict between two sides, royalists and parliamentarians, known as the English Civil Wars. So, additional information in this sentence is there was some conflict between royalists and parliamentarians. The conflict was known as the English Civil Wars. And in this conflict, we find that these early feminists, they all came from the royalist side, and that the author finds odd, but the author does not dispute that. All right. So this is what I carry away. Now, if you are into note making, obviously you're not going to write such a long sentence, but you can write short forms. See, for example, you can write that, okay, author's opinion, okay, odd, uh, but true, 17th century English women all are. You can write this if you are into note making. I'm not saying you have to make notes, but if you cannot kind of remember what you read without making some small notation and all, find a unique shorthand in which you can note down the takeaway. Notice that I did not write any details about 17th century forerunners of modern feminism, conflict between royalists and parliamentarians, English civil wars, because though that is the fluff. But the core idea here is, the crux is, they all belong to the royalist side. Author finds it odd. And that's the important part. Guys, let me know if this is clear to all of you. Let me know if this is clear. Let me know if you're able to follow what is involved in evolved reading. Right now, the way I'm reading, the way I'm understanding, the things that I'm taking away, all of this is one of the first steps of involved and evolved reading. I'm getting involved in the topic. All right, great. Okay, let's move to the second sentence. Now, the second sentence is a real bummer. It's long sentence. Okay, so let me just clear up this part. All right. I start with since. Now, at GMAT Viz, we tell you to treat transition words very carefully, because GMAT passages are liberally strewn with transition words. They hold together the twists and turns. They tell you what direction the paragraph is taking. So after this odd fact, the author is offering some sort of reasoning here with the word since. Let's see what the author is saying. Since could mean time also. Since can also mean because. Let's see what it means here. Since royalist ideology is often associated with the radical patriarchalism of 17th century theorist Robert Filman, a long sentence, shorten it. We are basically now going to say, because royalist ideology associated with patriarchalism of Filmer. Okay, shorten it, because the crux you will be able to remember. So here the author is trying to tell us, because royalist ideology is often associated, means generally people associate it with patriarchalism of film. Now, if you know what is patriarchalism, good for you. But if you don't know, don't worry. GMAT will not leave you like that. Another one of the things that we teach at GMAT Viz is, if you come across vocabulary that you don't understand, don't panic. There will be context given later on if GMAT test makers want you to understand that word. If they don't want you to understand that word, it means the word is not important. Okay? Remember that and bear in mind. So here we are saying, since royalist ideology is often associated with patriarchalism of Filmer, and then for the moment I'm going to hold this out and I'll continue. Historians have been puzzled by the fact. Now, so here we are saying, because royalist ideology is patriarchalism based ideology, that is why historians are puzzled by some fact. Okay, so this is the link. This is how your sentence correction skills will help you here. Now let me read the part in that dash to dash. It is a definition of Robert Filmer's patriarchalism. What is the definition? Patriarchalism that equates family and kingdom and asserts the divinely absolute power of the king, and by analogy means by comparison, male head of the household. So I'm telling myself here, okay, patriarchalism, sorry, I'm just writing it out so that you can understand. So in my head, I'm saying, okay, the patriarchalism means family is equal to kingdom, and we are talking about power of king equals to power of head of household, or the male head of household. I'm thinking this to myself. If I want to write it out, I'll write it out also, but it should be all in this. So basically the author is saying, because royalist ideology was of this type, it believed in the power of the male. That is why. So I'm going to remove this. Okay, because ideology associated with patriarchalism. Okay, that is why historians puzzled by the fact. Which fact? Now this is the fact that puzzles historians. Royalist women wrote the earliest extended criticism of the absolute subordination of women in marriage. So royalist women wrote against the subordination of women. That means royalist women wrote against male power. Okay, and that is what these historians find puzzling, that royalist ideology is generally believed to be patriarchal. Then it is odd that royalist women, they are writing against that ideology. Okay, and then if we read forward, these women, royalist women, wrote, number one, criticisms. Okay, and they also wrote, so there is and here, assertions of women's rational and moral equality with men. So they believed in women's moral and rational equality as well. Therefore, they were definitely against male power. So here I'm going to kind of note down that because royalist ideology believed in absolute male power, historians are puzzled that women who belong to such a family criticize the male power. This is my takeaway. Again, guys, let me know if all is clear till so far. How many of you are finding better clarity now? Nazmul says text is not clear. Okay, Nazmul, give me a moment. Let me just bold the text here also. Just a moment. Please adjust your screen quality, guys. Please adjust your screen quality, screen resolution rather, my bad. Otherwise, you'll find it difficult. I'm just going to make it bold, all of it. Yeah, I hope that's better. So let me know, guys, if you're able to understand clearly. Okay, great. Now there's a question. Did you understand? I'm going to bring up a poll again, guys. Did you understand this paragraph with this clarity earlier? Did you understand this paragraph with this much of clarity earlier? So far, whatever we have discussed. Did you understand with this clarity earlier? Earlier means when you read it. I think you haven't got the question. Yes, guys, I'm going to reset the question. When you read this passage, did you have such a precise understanding? When you read this passage, did you have such a precise understanding of the passage? And you don't have to say a yes or no for my benefit. This is more for your understanding, that what you need to do more for yourself. If you had the same understanding, very good. All right. We will, and you have to see that after this understanding, if you got the question wrong, then what went wrong. All right. So my query is, when you read this passage on your own, did you have the same understanding that you have now? I can see that a lot of you did not have a similar understanding earlier. Thank you for being honest, guys. Thank you so much for being honest. Great. Let's complete this. And notice the parts which I have underlined. You know, when you are reading, you need to know what is the main information and what is the fluff. So after what we've read so far, let's start with the third sentence. Some historians, okay, now the author is talking about another third party view, have questioned, so they don't agree with the facile equation of royalist ideology, okay, with Filmarian patriarchalism. Now, what does this part mean? I'm sure a lot of you just read this part and did not try to understand it. Maybe some of you did. So here the author is saying some historians don't believe that royalist ideology was equal to patriarchalism. Okay. Some historians do not believe this. They have questioned the equation, means they don't believe that royalist ideology was equal to Robert Filmer's patriarchalism. All right. This is what this portion says from here till here. And indeed means the author is now saying from his side. What is the author saying? If he's saying indeed, that means he would want to somehow directly or indirectly want to support it, right? There may have been no consistent differences between royalists and parliamentarians on issues of family organization and women's political rights. So the author here is saying that on one hand, we have some historians not believing in the fact that royalism was equal to patriarchalism. Then the author is also saying it is also not necessary that royalists and parliamentarians, my bad, just hold on. Okay. The author says that it is also possible that the royalists had no differences with the parliamentarians on certain issues of family organization and women's political rights. All right. But then the author says, but in that case, so if there had been no difference between the royalists and the parliamentarians, then why did all the women belong to the royalist side? Then the author says, in that case, one would expect early feminists to be equally divided between the two sides. So there we have it. The author started about the odd fact, and then the author rounds up about the odd fact. So let me clean this up. So here, author finally rounds up and concludes the oddity observed at the beginning, right? He began by saying it is odd that all royalist women all the early feminists belong to the royalist side. And then there he says that if the royalists and parliamentarians agreed on certain ideas, then half of the women feminists should have come from parliamentarian side as well. So if I summarize the paragraph, the author is saying, given the background on the ideologies of the two sides, the author finds it odd that all 17th century English women were royalists and none were parliamentarians. This is the crux of this paragraph. So do let me know if this is clear, then we will move to the answer choice elimination. Let me know if you're clear with the explanation. Nazmul, I have made this bold. I hope you can just see it now better. So let me know if this entire paragraph is clear to you. Take a moment, read through the points I have made. Okay. So when you are involving yourself at this level, you are reading each sentence to really understand what is being said. Then your understanding of the paragraph evolves. You come out with a precise understanding of what is going on. And then when you're answering questions based on such text, you don't have to go back to the passage. You can eliminate choices easily and confidently. All right. And that's what we're going to do now. So with this, the question was, why has the author, what is the primary purpose? If we go back to the question, let me just go back. The question was, the author of the passage refers to Robert Filmer primarily in order to. So basically, we have to identify the function or the role Robert Filmer plays here. Okay. And remember, just to point out to you, Robert Filmer was mentioned to introduce patriarchalism. Patriarchalism was introduced to tell us it was royalist ideology. And then we were told that because royalist ideology was Robert Filmer's patriarchalism, therefore historians, puzzled royalist women wrote criticism of subordination of women. Okay, so all in all, now if we pre-think, Filmer was mentioned. Now step by step. Okay, why was Filmer mentioned? Filmer was mentioned, so I am reading the first point here. Filmer was mentioned just to introduce the idea of patriarchalism. Okay, that's the reason the name of Filmer was brought in. Now, why was patriarchalism introduced? To show that it was the ideology royalists held. Why were we pointed out royalist ideology? Because we wanted to show that royalist ideology was all about absolute power of the male. Why were we told about the absolute power of the male? Because we wanted to point out that royalist women wrote against this male power. So, the purpose of referring to Filmer was to show that royalist women were in the beliefs of royalist women, were in stark contrast to royalist ideology. All right. So, the purpose of mentioning Filmer step by step is to show that on one hand, royalist ideology believed in male power, but on the other hand, the royalist women wrote against that power. All right. So, the purpose Robert Filmer plays, the role of that Robert Filmer line is to show the contrast between the two. Is this pre-thinking clear, guys? Is this pre-thinking clear? Is this pre-thinking clear to all of you? If you have any queries, ask. And whenever you have to identify the function of any sentence, any example, anything in the passage, always refer to the entire thing, you know. We have this thing about referring to only small part, small portion, what we call local inference, but that doesn't work. All right. The reference should be with the context, within the context of the passage, not just a line. Great. Now what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to bring up the question once again and the polls once again. I'm going to give you the chance to once again attempt the first question. So I'll bring up the question once more. Just hold on, guys. Let me see, the question must be there. Hold on a second. So I am going to bring up the polls again, guys. You can stick to what you chose earlier. You can change your question. I'm going to show you the comparison. Go ahead, guys. Nazmul, the strategy is to read carefully. That's the basic strategy. You need to break down every sentence. You need to connect the ideas within the same sentence. You need to connect one sentence to the other sentence, Nazmul. In fact, right at the head of the chat box, I have posted the free trial link. The strategies are going to be taught to you one by one in the course. If you want to take an overview of the course, you can try out the trial version of the course. Najmul, I requested right at the beginning that I'm going to talk about the time-saving irony later on. Tell me one thing, if you are learning how to drive the car or you're learning how to swim, do you keep looking at your watch to see whether you're keeping pace with the time when you're learning something? No, no. So when you're learning a skill, at that time you cannot time yourself. First learn the skill. Once the skill becomes second nature, you will automatically see your time goes down. But if your RC needs improvement, then you have to change the way you're solving it now. Okay, guys, so I'm going to count 5 and then I'm going to close the polls. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. So I'm going to read out the results of the earlier polls and then you can compare it with the poll that is there in front of you. So earlier, let me write it out here. 13% of you chose A. So let me draw a column here. Okay. This was earlier and this is now. Earlier, 13% of you chose A. This time, none of you. Okay. Earlier, 33% of you chose B. Then 26% of you chose C. 20% of you chose D and 6% of you chose E. Let me just take a quick look at the polls this time around. I have 33, 16 and 50. So now I have 33, 16 and 50%. Notice the difference. Notice the difference proper reading can make to your answer choice. Okay, nobody chose A and E. It was very easy to eliminate. Although earlier together 20% of you chose A and E. From 26%, it came down to 16%. So the closest option is B to D. And those of you who marked B, I guess you stayed with B almost. But then it's clear here that a lot of you change your option to either D or B. Mostly D. So proper, precise understanding will always benefit you guys. Learn the skill, master the skill. Don't be scared of it just because you think more time is going to be taken. Time will be taken. I'll discuss the time portion later on with you. Right now, as I requested earlier, please don't think about time. Think about the process. If you think about time, then you'll just think about time on the exam only. All right? Thinking about time actually and ironically wastes more time. Instead, you should think what you need to do in order to save that time. Okay, guys, let me quickly discuss the reasons why the choices are incorrect. So, the pre-thinking tells us that Filmer was mentioned in order to pinpoint the difference between the royalist women ideology, the feminist ideology, and the ideology of the royalist. Okay. So A, nobody has marked and A is not the correct answer. The purpose is not to show that royalist ideology was more radical. The purpose is not to show royalist ideology more radical. Okay. So this is, I'm not going to even discuss this. All you need to do when you read such sentences, you ask yourself, is the author's intention to indicate that royalist ideology was more radical than understood? The answer is no. Ask proper answers, proper questions, you'll get correct answers. So A is out. Now B, 33% of you marked this on both occasions. B is not the correct answer. Why? Let me ask you, what is the meaning of qualify, guys? What is the meaning of qualify? You can answer me in the chat box and don't Google for it. Right now, I want what you think is the meaning of qualify. You may be right, you may be wrong. Go ahead and tell me what is the meaning of qualify. At GMAT Viz, we have this small, video lesson where we teach you how to differentiate between some common confusing words like evaluate, assess, examine, discuss, present. Nazmul says qualify means justify. No. Gaurav says support, no. Deep Jyoti, support, no. Qualified does not mean support. Qualified does not mean justified. What does qualify mean? So that is the first step. No, George, qualify does not mean support. So what does qualify mean? Let me see if somebody else is going to set up the answer. Anybody else? Jess says qualify means to prove. No, Jess. Jitender says qualify means sufficient. Jitender, I would like to understand what you're trying to say. Preeti says eligible. No. In the context of this answer choice, qualify does not mean eligible. No, Pooja, qualify does not mean capable. So I can clearly see that a lot of you did not know the exact application of qualify here. Very good, Deepjyoti. Qualify means to reserve, or let me put it this way, put a limitation on the meaning of something. Okay. Now, if we look at this, qualify means to limit the strength or the meaning of a statement. Okay. So ask yourselves, does the author want to limit the strength or meaning of any claim? Which claim? Patriarchalism formed the basis of royalist ideology. Does the author want to limit the meaning of this claim? Yes, guys. Does the author, I'm going to put up a poll here. Does the author want to limit the meaning of the claim mentioned by that arrow? No. This is how you've got to break down your answer choice, guys. Even if you don't know the meaning of claim, I'm saying, sorry, even if you don't know the meaning of qualify. So, Nazmul, you were talking about strategies. These are small strategies, hidden strategies. Even if you don't know the meaning of qualify, tell yourself, okay, I don't know the meaning of qualify, but is the author doing anything to the claim that patriarchalism formed the basis of royalist ideology? Is the author trying to do anything to that claim? No. The author is not trying to do anything to that claim. The author is trying to bring about a contrast between that ideology and the feminist ideology. So even if you don't know the meaning of qualify, you can still correctly answer this question by asking yourself, does the author want to qualify any claim? Which claim? Patriarchalism formed the basis of royalist ideology. Does the author mention Robert Filmer because of that? No. Okay, so the general claim is that royalists followed Filmer's ideology, and therefore the author is not trying to limit the meaning of that claim. He's just mentioning the general claim. And this falls in the bucket of what we at GMAT is called distortion and half truth. Half of it is truth. Patriarchalism did form the basis of royalist ideology, but the author did never qualified that claim. All right, and therefore this choice is incorrect. All right, so see, 16% of you shortlisted this. Question means to challenge, okay, to raise doubts. Ask yourselves, is the author doubting the fact that early feminists were all royalists? Is he doubting this fact? He says at the beginning, it is odd but indisputable fact that English women all identified with royalists. So he's not doubting that fact. Okay? This choice is the opposite of what the premise is saying. This choice is totally incorrect. Those of you who marked C, take a long look. So my query is to all of you who marked B and C, those of you who marked B or C, is it clear why both B and C are incorrect? Is it clear why both B and C are incorrect, guys? Great. By now you know D. Let's look at the language of D. Highlight means to focus. Okay. Highlight means to focus. An apparent tension. Tension means contrast between royalist ideology, ideas of early feminists. Royalist ideology, ideology of royalist feminists. And therefore, this is the correct choice. If you are reading the passage properly, you will have no problems doing what I'm doing. But you have to reach here, you have to start with breaking sentences. In SC, we tell you how to break and read the sentence. Let me just quickly show you that. E, nobody marked at the end of the day. Uh, the idea was not to argue that royalists had conflicting opinions. Royalists did not have conflicting opinions, and therefore this is also out. So, at the key difference between how normal reading is done, how we all read in, by rushing through, is we give more importance to reading speed, and I give, or GMAT Viz gives more importance to comprehension speed. And of course, this can never win, because at the end of the day, the answer will come because of the comprehension. Okay. So, involved and evolved reading is all about thinking like the author. First step is to break the sentence into small pieces. And this we teach you in our sentence correction module: where to break, how to relate one segment to the other, how to understand the role of one part with the other. All right. Derive the meaning of that small portion. Then, for the subsequent sentences, keep relating back to the previous sentence to understand what the author is saying. That's what I was doing, right? Okay, we need to understand what the author is doing, because 70% of the questions, directly or indirectly, are about what the author is trying to tell us. Here you can take the help of the transition words and conjunctions to relate the meaning of one sentence to the other. And finally, you try to summarize what you're reading. All right, summarize each paragraph so that you can eventually summarize the entire passage. How to summarize paragraphs and reach the main point is a topic for the next webinar, guys, on 20th of March. But for today, we are just going to focus on involved and evolved reading. About the time thing, I am going to discuss, don't worry. So as I was mentioning, that at GMATViz, we teach you how to build the right skills through small strategies. We teach you where to pause. We tell you how to take care of complex words, how to take care of the words that you don't know the meaning of. We tell you how to notice what is an opinion and where is the fact. We tell you then differentiate between the author's opinion and any other person's opinion. And therefore, all of this, we teach you how to understand the intent of the passage. Okay, so it's a skill builder. We devote over 10 hours to this skill builder only building the skill of reading. Okay, and then we lead you through purpose of the passage and advanced RC concept, where we teach you different kinds of questions and the traps that you find there. Okay, so small video lessons to teach you small strategies, purpose of opinions, transition words, confusing words. All right, all of this. Okay, so I'm sure you don't want to hear me keep on going about this. Here's another passage for all of you guys. There's the question for you. All the best. And I don't see any queries so far, so I'm sure I'm going to give you again 3 minutes here to read those two short paragraphs and answer that one question. Okay, let me bring up the poll, and I'm going to mute myself in the meantime. All right. All right, guys, I'm going to count 5. So if you haven't put in your answers, please do so. Here goes the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. So let's see. 25% of you believe the correct answer is A. 62% of you believe the correct answer is B. 12% believe it's C. And then we don't have any takers for D and E. Okay. So let's quickly straight away delve into answering, reading the passage properly. Let me just make this bold. I think you were facing problem, one of you. Just give me a moment. Okay. Just a sec. Okay. I think I'm just going to start now. So I hope you guys can see. To put things simply, induction emphasizes the individual. So right away when you start with this, you realize the author is trying to talk about something called induction. And if you know what is induction, good. If you don't, wait. Okay, wait to see what it means. So to put things simply means the author is going to simplify something. What is that thing? Author says induction stresses on the individual. The individual means the single. Whereas, so whereas here is a transition word, and therefore the comparison. Deduction begins with generalization. So the author is introducing two terms, induction and deduction. All right. And he says one is all about the individual, the other is about generalization. It's not about the individual, but it's about the overall. Okay. We don't know why the author is saying this here. Science largely began with a focus on deduction. So what is deduction? Deduction is generalization. So we are basically saying science began with generalization. And science was trying to find universal laws. Science was trying to hope and to explain as much about the world as possible. And that is why probably we can infer that it focused on deduction. Now, why is the author trying to tell us how science began? Or why is the author trying to tell us that earlier the focus was on deduction? Maybe the author is going to tell us how the focus shifted. We can preempt. All right. So let's read. In the 19th century, generalizations reached a pinnacle of overuse. So this science began with generalization, then generalization was overused, particularly for explaining human characteristics. Okay, so we are told that how generalization or deduction became overused. And then the author says while. So that's another transition word. Deduction became disfavored because of those missteps. So deduction means this generalization became disfavored because of the overuse. Okay. Then what happened? Induction rose to favor. So because of overuse, generalization became disfavored. Induction instead gained favor on the heels of more quantitative techniques. So induction probably had more quantitative techniques for describing individual objects of study. So if we recapitulate, summarize the paragraph, the passage introduces two terms. Induction is about particular, individual, specific, whichever way you want to see it. Deduction is about making generalizations. And then the author says too much of generalization being used, and then induction gained popularity. So if you summarize this paragraph, the author is talking about two terms, induction and deduction, and how the former gained favor over the other. This is what the author wants to talk about here. Okay, simple paragraph, and I'm sure all of you understood this well. Para 2 gets a little convoluted here. The problem of induction. So now you realize, okay, in the first paragraph, the author spoke about the two terms and how one was favored earlier and then the other became more favored. Okay. Now here the author is saying the other one, which became favored, also had a problem. What is that problem? The problem is the impossibility of observing every individual case. Now, in your mind's eye, a lot of you may not have understood this sentence and just moved on, but if you did, very good. So let's say if there are 100 cases, then the problem of induction is it cannot observe each of those 100 cases. It cannot observe all 100 cases. In other words, means the author is going to explain there is always uncertainty about what hasn't been directly observed. So out of 100, we are being told that all cannot be observed. So let's say, suppose we say 50 can be observed. And let's say, I'm just saying, taking a number, 50 cannot be observed, right? This is there. The author is saying, this is a problem with induction, okay? So, therefore, the author is saying to help fill the gaps between observations. That means because this hasn't been observed and because there is always uncertainty about what you haven't observed, you have to fill the gap. There is a gap. And to fill the gap, we make generalizations that are based on what has been observed. So on the basis of this, we make generalizations. And this generalization is used to fill the gap, all right, left behind by what you cannot observe. So this understanding has to happen. That means the problem with induction seems that you still have to use deduction, right? You still have to use deduction. You say it is induction, you say you are observing every individual data, but you really can't. And the data that you cannot really observe directly, you use the data from other observations to fill in the gaps. So you are basically using generalizations in order to make inductions. All right. Anyways, so that is what this paragraph says so far. And then we are told in modern science, these generalizations or predictive guides become scientific models. Then there are different kinds of models. Okay. And then we are told empirical model is most popular. And then the author also says that empirical means it is built from observed data. Okay. Observed data, yes. So this is observed data. The observed data is used to make generalizations. The generalizations fill gap about the non-observed data. And then you have the scientific models. Okay, great. And then we are told the purpose of the model is to help the researcher understand stuff, to make predictions, all right? And applying these generalizations to unknown situations is deduction. So all in all, this paragraph is all about the problem with induction, how it cannot observe each and every individual case, and therefore certain generalizations have to be made in order to fill in the gaps. Okay. If we really want to see the flow of the paragraph, so the summary of the second paragraph is it talks about the problem with the process of induction and then how induction helps develop generalized models for deduction. So the flow of the passages, the author first introduces two terms or processes. One gain favor over the other. And of course, remember, you have questions like, what is the purpose of the first paragraph? What is the purpose of the second paragraph? So understanding the flow makes sense. And then the author describes the process of induction, its problems, and its predictive model for deduction. Now, the question was, what is the problem with induction? So if we rethink, what is the problem? We are saying that cannot observe each case. Okay, feeling of uncertainty about conclusions without studying left out cases. So cover gap, generalization. So we are basically saying problem with induction is generalization must be drawn. So the problem with induction is that it has to somewhat resort to deduction. All right. That is the problem. Now, if we go back to the question, I'm going to go back and give you a chance to re-choose. Here's the question. Let me bring up the poll again, and you can have a go at it. So the polls are up there. You can take about 30 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to end the polls. I hope those of you who wanted to revise their decisions have revised it. And those of you who want to stick to your decision. So per our pre-thinking, the problem with induction is that it has to take the help of generalization. That's the problem. Okay, great. Very, very interesting is everybody seems to have stuck to their position. Earlier also 25% of you chose A. Now also 25% of you chose A. Earlier 62% chose B. Now also 62% chose B. Earlier 12% of you chose C. Now also 12%. So good. You want to stick to what you had chosen earlier, it seems. Let us see what the correct answer is. So here's choice A. 25% of you chose this, guys. Okay, 25%. Now let's see what it says. It means it here refers to induction, because that was the question. What is the problem of induction? So we are saying induction fails in its observation of individual cases. Please understand, induction is impossible observing every case. Does it fail to observe case or does it fail to observe every case? Ask yourself, guys. Fail, okay, it fails in certain observations, but you're distorting that idea. It is not possible to make observations about each specific case. That is the idea. This is given in the paragraph, that you cannot make observations about each case. But what is A saying? A is distorting and saying it fails in its observation. So this is a distortion. And has to depend on speculative measures. This part can be said to be true, only this part. Has to depend on measures to fill gaps. But are they speculative? Remember, they are not speculative. They are based on what has been observed. So A is incorrect, guys. It's a distortion of what is given in the passage. In the passage, you are told you cannot observe every case. Okay? It fails to observe every case. A says it fails to observe cases. Okay? That's the difference. Then the passage says some of the gaps are filled up with data that has been observed so far. Here you're saying speculative measures are taken to fill the gaps, not speculative. Speculative means guesswork. Not guessing. We are using data that has been observed, and from that we are drawing generalizations. You can't call it speculative. The correct answer is B, guys. And a lot of you might have not chosen B because you thought of the word advantage is mentioned. And you might have told yourself, okay, we are looking for a disadvantage of induction, a problem of induction. But notice this but here. The author says advantage of induction is its basis, and the basis are the specific observation of individual cases. Yes, that's the advantage. It can observe every individual case, but the problem is, okay, it too has to resort to generalization of some specific cases, and therefore B is the correct answer. This is what we thought, that it has to somewhat resort to generalization or deduction. Do let me know if this is clear so far, guys. Are all of you clear why B is the correct answer? Let me know if all of you are clear why B is the correct answer. Let me know if you're clear why B is the correct answer. Great. Some of you have marked C as well, and I'm just going to quickly look at C. It cannot draw up a predictive model unless and until. Now, this unless and until becomes very, very absolute. Okay, it like makes it a necessary condition. It cannot draw up a predictive model unless it has studied all cases. Can it study all cases? No. Does it draw up a predictive model even if it cannot study every individual case? Yes. Therefore, option C is opposite of what is given in the passage. Okay. Predictive models are drawn up without studying every individual case. Predictive models are built on the basis, some of the cases are observed directly, some of them are based on, the gaps are filled in with generalization, and then the predictive models are made. So we can't say you cannot draw up the predictive models unless and until. Let's see if I have any query here. Okay, cool. Seems to be clear. So D and E nobody marked, neither at the beginning. So of course, all are not built on the basis of imprecise observations. This is distortion. Again, this is the function of the process of deduction, and this is not the problem of induction. So this is also out. So guys, now the time. Okay, you're worried about time, a lot of you. Please understand, initially it may seem time consuming. Today it may seem time consuming to you, and it might be time consuming at this moment when you're breaking down and reading it, because this is not your habit. This is not generally how you do it. However, if you keep up with this process, it will become second nature. It will become something that you do intuitively, habitually, without thinking twice. Much like the way you drive a car, or you peel a potato, or you scramble an egg or anything. Okay, practice. So with practice, you learn to map the passage the way we've been doing today, understand the flow of idea, and derive the author's point. And all of this can help you answer the questions with confidence, accuracy, and less time. Okay, so here's another passage, guys. I'm going to mute myself. If you have any queries, you can ask. And once again, let me point out to you that I have posted the link to the free trial version of the course right at the head of the chat. I'm posting it again in the chat as well. You can also set up a free call using the Calendly link with our experts to discuss your preparation and what you should do about it. I'm going to mute myself. I want you to read this paragraph and I'll bring up the question next. Right now, you don't have the question. You can just read the paragraph and then I'm going to bring up the question. So draw your understanding carefully. You have 4 minutes to read this passage. I'm going to give you more time so that I want you to practice involved and evolve reading. Deep Jyoti, I think referring to the question really makes no sense, because when you are reading the passage for the first time, you can only see one question. You may look at that question if you want to, just to give you an edge for the first question, but then please remember, you can't do that for every question. You would have to read the passage first properly. Even if you read the question first, you will go back and reread that question when you're answering it. So reading question first before reading the passage really has no added advantage. It might also lead to a disadvantage. You might start focusing on a particular area that the question was about. So that won't work. Okay, that can bring some bias. 4 minutes, guys. Time starts now. Okay, I'm sure a lot of you have finished reading the passage. Your 4 minutes are up. So, what I'm going to do is now bring forward the question for you. Just hold on a second. Where is the question? Uh, Here's the question, guys. Let's see if you can answer this question without referring to the passage. Can you do that? Or let me wait. Just hold on a second. I'll place it in the same frame. Give me a moment. I did have the question and this in the same frame. Just give me a moment. Hold on a second. I'll put it in the same frame in a moment. The question also, so that you guys can answer it, and then we can. Give me a moment, guys. I'm just arranging things. Seems to have kind of got uh, 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 just a second. I think now you can view the question as well as the, yeah. So go ahead, guys. Let me just take you back. Here's the question. Let me bring up the polls for you. Right, guys, I'm going to count 10. If you haven't put in your answers in the polls, please do so. Here it goes. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. All right, the answers are divided between A and C. 50% of you chose A and 50% of you chose C. Okay, that narrows down things a bit. Let's see if you're correct. And once again, guys, since the session is about involved and evolved reading, I'm quickly going to show you how to read this in an involved and evolved manner. So bear with me. The purpose is not just to answer the question, but to make sure that you've read it properly and answered it. All right. So again here, if we divide the sentences, I'm going to speed up the process a bit. So if you look at this sentence tells us that there is a person called Antonia Castaneda and what she is studying, AC, okay, has used something from women's studies and Mexican American history to examine 19th century literature or literary portrayals of Mexican women. To shorten it, therefore, we are saying that the subject of AC's study is 19th century literary portrayals of Mexican women. What does that mean? Simplify it. It means that this person, Antonia, she wanted to see how the Mexican women were shown or depicted in the 19th century literature. That is what she was trying to understand. That sets the tone of the passage. And from thereafter, it's mentioned what Castaneda or Antonia Castaneda notes. So, what she notes from here to here, and then again what she notes from here to here. So, if I shorten all of this, it's given to us that Antonia says that scholars of women's history. So, remember, she was studying women's studies. So, the scholars of these observe that in the US, male novelists of the period, which period? 19th century, define women solely in their domestic roles. And then in between, we are given some information about that period. That period, what happened? Women's economic role, financial role in the home based agriculture kind of was pushed back by the factory based industrial economy. So we get to understand that 19th century was the emergence of industrial economy, and a lot of women's economic role, like they had been playing a financial role in the home-based agriculture, that took a backseat. And that is why probably maybe the male novelists of that period, they don't define women in the role, in the economic role, they define women only in the domestic role. So that is what Castaneda notes down, that women's traditional economic role was threatened, and these novelists identify women only. Now, notice this is women in general, whereas she was trying to portray the Mexican women. So, till now, she hasn't spoken about Mexican women, she has spoken about women in general. All right. And then in the final sentence, she talks about his non-Hispanic women, okay, and Hispanic. Now, if you don't know what is non-Hispanic and Hispanic, hold on. Because if you read ahead, it says Hispanic law protected Californianas, and who were they? They were the Mexican women. So if Hispanic law protected Mexican women, it means Hispanic law. Hispanic means Mexican. So you get to understand that Hispanic means Mexican and non-Hispanic means, hold on a second, non-Mexican. This is how you will draw relationship. All right, if you don't know what is Hispanic. So then the third thing Antonia notes here is that non-Hispanic women were economically at a disadvantage. That means the non-Mexican women economically disadvantaged. Mexican women, all the Californianas who had property rights, who had inheritance rights, they were not at a disadvantage. How? They were protected by Hispanic law. So this paragraph is all about what Antonia Castaneda notes. All right. Just give me a moment, guys. I'll just have a sip of water. Sorry, guys, about that. So, so here the summary of this paragraph is we're talking about Castaneda's area of research, and we are explaining what she found out in during her research. about the Mexican women compared to the non-Mexican women. Okay, so far we haven't reached, so how these Mexican women were portrayed in literature, that part we haven't reached yet. And then when you move to the second paragraph, in the second paragraph we are told there was a stereotypical plot found about the the plot written by male non-Hispanic novelists. So these plots were about what? We are told that AC believes that the Hispanic law was the reason why the male non-Mexican authors created a typical plot. In that plot, it was seen that the non-Mexican women, non-Hispanic means non-Mexican men, they wanted to marry the rich Hispanic women. Hispanic women were the Californianas. See, we have story of an ambitious non-Mexican merchant desirous of marrying the rich Californiana or the rich Hispanic woman. All right. So here we are beginning to see how the Mexican women were portrayed in the literature. Guys, can you hear me now? I think there was some lag. I couldn't hear anything. Can you hear me now, guys? Let me finish explaining this. I don't know, there was some lag. Okay, so these non-Hispanic men, they wanted to marry the rich Hispanic women. And therefore, AC notes a contradiction here. She notes that, what is the contradiction? Look at the last sentence. She says here that there were unflattering literary depictions of Mexicans. And this is here. The novel's favorable portrayal of such women is noteworthy. So the women were portrayed favorably, the Mexican women. But then there is a contradiction here. She says that the favorable portrayal of such women is noteworthy. Why? Because otherwise there were unflattering depictions of Mexicans. Now notice this Mexicans is not Mexican men or Mexican women, but Mexicans in general. Okay, if you notice this. So Mexicans were portrayed unflatteringly. Such women means the Mexican Californianas were portrayed favorably. Okay. And then the author talks about the importance of economic alliances forged through marriages with Californianas. explains this apparent contradiction. Which apparent contradiction? The only contradiction mentioned is earlier in the paragraph, right? We are told that because of their real life economic significance. Whose real life economic significance? The Californianas. The Californianas were portrayed more favorably. So the contradiction is between Californianas portrayed more favorably, others of the same nationality. Same nationality means the other Mexicans. So that's the contradiction here. And the reason behind the contradiction given is marriages were made. The marriages had economic advantages. So the Mexican women, the Californianas who had property rights, who had inheritance rights, they were portrayed favorably, but the other Mexicans weren't. So that's the summary of this paragraph to explain how the Hispanic laws that were favorable towards the rich Mexican women, they were responsible for the favorable portrayal of the Mexicans and Mexican women in novel. So remember, that's what the author started to find out, right? How Mexican women of the 19th century were portrayed in literature. So now we come to the apparent contradiction. So we know that the contradiction is between Californianas, that means Mexican women, and others of the same nationality means Mexicans. So let's see, the apparent contradiction mentioned in line 29 refers to discrepancy between which two entities? Legal status of Mexican women in territorial California? No. Status in United States? No. And so 50% of you marked A, guys. A is out. Can you, I've already given you A to mark, but can you do something? Let me reset the poll, and out of the remaining 4 options, I'm giving you the chance to re-choose. A is incorrect. Now you tell me what is the correct answer. Go ahead. Read the answer choices carefully, guys. I think you're hurrying, you're rushing to read the answer choices. Don't do that. You're looking for 2 entities. One part is the Californianas, the Mexican women, the rich Mexican women. The other part is Mexicans, the common Mexicans. Okay? So your answer choice must contain these 2 elements. The contradiction, okay. So I'm going to end the poll again. So earlier it was 50% of you chose A and 50% of you chose C. Now I have 50% with C and 50% with D. So let's see what the correct answer is. B is not the correct answer because unflattering depiction of Mexicans in novels, yes, it's given here, unflattering literary depictions of Mexicans. But is the contradiction between actual public sentiment? No. So B is out. Existence of marriages between Californianas and non-Hispanic merchants versus the strictures? No. There is nothing about the strictures against marriages in novels. That's not the contradiction. So C is not the answer. The answer is D. Literary depiction of elite Californianas versus literary depiction of other Mexican individuals. And D is the correct answer. You're not reading the answer choice carefully, guys. You're making the mistake there. Of course, E is not the answer. Actual circumstance of those lives and portrayal of privileged lives, this was not even given in the passage. So that's the end of this. See, guys, at GMAT Viz, what we teach you is if you are inferring locally, if you're just looking at one sentence and drawing an inference, for example, in this question, they were asking you, what is this apparent contradiction? If you just focus on one part, you will not be able to get the correct answer. Local inference is like searching for the answer from a small part of the passage, but you need to pay attention to global inference. You have to understand the full second paragraph to answer this question correctly. And most of the time, we don't even think about it. We just look for band-aid solutions, ad hoc solutions, short-term solutions. So there are lots of traps that we talk about in the GMAT Viz RC portion. Distortion and half truths, confusing words. So you saw one such word today, qualify. You've seen the way we have brought out how choices can be distorted and made to look the correct answer. Opposite of the premise choices, and so on and so forth. And a lot of times you don't see these traps coming, and therefore you fall in the traps. So once you have studied about these traps, understood them, used them, like when you're solving every question using these traps, then you're able to eliminate the choices for the right reason by categorizing them in these buckets. And this can be done only when you're reviewing the solutions which are written properly. All right. Otherwise, you can just solve a passage and that's it. You see what you've got correct, what you've got incorrect, but the reason why you got something incorrect, the reason why you marked something correct, all of those need to be studied so that you can avoid falling in those traps later on. Okay. And again, at GMAT Quiz, we teach you about these traps in the ACE, the answer choice elimination video lesson. So I told you I would talk about the time saving irony. See, most students, what they do is they read very fast. Okay, they believe that if you read slowly, if you break and read, it's going to take a lot of time. So they finish the entire passage within 2-3 minutes, and then with a rough idea of, because you can't really have a very good idea in 2-3 minutes. So with a very rough idea of what you have read, you move to the elimination of the answer choices. But then you have to reread. Either you reread the passage or you go up and down between the answer choices. So you land up taking about 2 minutes per question. So you tried to save time in the initial reading, but you took a lot of time while answering the questions. So that means you solved the passage in about 9 to 11 minutes. Okay. Maybe a 4-question passage you solve in about 3 or 4 question passage in 9 to 11 minutes. On the other hand, a GMAT Viz student, what the GMAT Viz student learns to do is read properly the first time, take maybe double the time that somebody normally would take, but have a very clear understanding of the passage the way we discussed today. And then when you're eliminating the choices, you eliminate it within a minute. You would have seen that for yourselves also. Whenever I brought up the poll second time, you were able to eliminate choices faster. Of course, you had read them earlier also, but then with a clearer understanding, it is always easier to rule out choices, guys. Okay. So while you're learning how to follow the involved reading method, give time. Okay, you will save time. More importantly, your accuracy will be higher. You will not only be saving 2-3 precious minutes, but your accuracy will also be higher. With that, we come to the end of this webinar, guys. Once I'm just drawing your attention to the free trial link that I've posted at the head of the chat box. And if you want to talk to any of our experts, you can set up a free call at Calendly, the link of which also I'm providing in the chat once again. Any queries you guys have, please go ahead and ask. I'm there for the next couple of minutes. If you are facing any issues with your prep or anything, please go ahead and ask. I hope you benefited from the session, guys. The next session that we will be conducting will be next tomorrow. Also, we have a session. Then the next Saturday, and verbal session will be on Sunday, that is 20th of March, same time. We're going to talk about main point questions on that particular webinar. So do let me know, guys, how you found the webinar. Did you find the methodology helpful? Again, I understand that it takes time, but nevertheless, what we've seen is it really works. It has worked for most of our toppers. So if you have any queries, go ahead and ask, guys. When are you guys taking the exam? So Lavanya, Ruhul, Richa, Gaurav, Nishit, Vivek, Najmul, yes. I hope you guys are preparing well, learning all the strategies. I've seen some of you around in my earlier webinars as well. Okay, Faiz, May, all the best. Practice well from every question. Analyze, once you solve the question, always go through the solution in detail. Understand what you did right, what you did wrong, and then use that learning to solve further questions. Okay, Richa. So, Richa, it's a long way to go, but all the best. Lavanya, Faiz, Ruhul, Gaurav says depends on the preparations. Plan your preparations ahead, guys. Make a weekly plan of what you're going to do on a daily basis. So, first decide how much time you're going to prepare, give yourself on a daily basis. Then tell yourself what you're going to do on that day. So, make a routine for a week and stick to that. Okay, guys. Very, very nice having you on board today and going through the question. I hope, Gaurav, you found the rest of the webinar helpful, although the initial question, the initial passage was familiar. So, guys, I hope you found the webinar helpful. Thank you for being such an attentive audience, even when there were some audio issues towards the end. You guys did not leave, so thank you very much. Faiz, when you say topic specific questions means are you talking about RC passage topics? You're welcome, Richa. So if you're talking about particular kinds of passages, then you're welcome, Richa, Lavanya, Gaurav, Faiz, Rohul, Najmul, Vivek, Nitish, Nishit. Okay. So you can read up articles from New York Times. All right. You can read articles from Harvard Business Magazine or Harvard Magazine. You can take up articles from, there is this site called sciencedaily.com, aldaily.com, theeconomist.com. All right. So fairs, you can like read diverse topics, business affairs, economics, history, some geography. You can just actually do some regular reading from the Britannica. Okay, you're talking about CR, all right, Faiz. So this you'll have to do a little bit of search on the GMAT club, because I do believe you have this Butler thing competition that is posted from time to time, and it contains specific topic questions. Okay, you can also filter on GMAT club to get only evaluate questions. All right, you can filter and find out on GMAT club, but otherwise I don't know of one specific place as such. I think on GMAT Club you have this Excel sheet. I'm not so sure where it is, but it is there, where you have all the questions, OG questions, segregated based on their topics. So you have different sheets for different topics. You'll probably find it on GMAT Club. That's what one of my students told me earlier. Okay, guys, thank you, all of you. Very good day if you're just beginning your day, and a good night if this is the end of the day for you. See you guys around again. Bye bye. Thank you.